All right, so get this. We're diving into the world of classical music in film. We've got this awesome podcast episode as our source material, and it's seriously mind-blowing.
It's wild how those centuries-old symphonies and sonatas can actually shape how we experience movies.
Right. It's like they're working on us without us even knowing.
Yeah, it's like a secret language, adding layers of emotion and meaning that we might not even realize are there.
Whoa, that's deep. But I'm curious, this whole thing started way back in the silent film era, right?
Exactly. Imagine a silent chase scene, but with, a lively Mozart scherzo playing in the background.
Okay, so instead of car chases and explosions, we've got Mozart. I'm trying to picture it.
It would be a totally different experience. It kind of highlights how essential music was back then, even without spoken dialogue.
I guess that makes sense. But why classical specifically? Why not something else, like folk music?
Well, classical music offers this incredible range of emotions and moods. It's like a universal language that can set the tone instantly.
So even before films could talk, directors were already using music to tell stories.
Precisely. And when talkies came around, that tradition just continued evolving. We can thank the silent era for setting the stage.
Speaking of iconic moments, we got to mention 2001, A Space Odyssey. I mean, that opening scene with Strauss's also Sprach Zarathustra, chills every time.
Kubrick, what a genius. It's more than just cosmic wonder, though. He chose that piece to represent humanity's evolution. It even ties into this philosophical work about, our journey into the unknown.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how one piece of music can add so much depth. But 2001 isn't the only one, right?
Oh, definitely not. Apocalypse Now, for example, that helicopter attack scene set to Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries.
Oh, man, that one's intense. You've got this almost celebratory music playing against the backdrop of war. It's unsettling, but so effective.
It's a perfect example of irony, right? By pairing this traditionally heroic piece with the horrors of war, it makes us question the whole idea of heroism.
It's like the music is challenging us to think deeper, to see beyond the surface.
Exactly. Now, speaking of Kubrick, remember how he used Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in A Clockwork Orange?
Wait, the Ode to Joy. That one's supposed to be all uplifting and stuff. What was he going for there?
Well, he used it in a way that makes it seriously creepy. It's almost like he was playing with our expectations of classical music.
It's incredible how a piece so beloved can take on a whole new meaning in a film. It shows you the power of a director's choices.
Oh, absolutely. But sometimes that same power can create moments of pure beauty, even in the darkest settings.
You're thinking of The Shawshank Redemption, right?
Yeah.
That scene with Mozart's Solaria playing over the prison loudspeakers.
Yes. It's such a simple scene, but so powerful. In the midst of all that harsh reality, the music becomes a symbol of freedom and hope.
It's like a reminder that beauty can exist even in the most unexpected places.
Exactly. And it showcases the transcendent power of art, even within prison walls.
So we've seen how classical music can add meaning, create irony, and even offer a sense of hope. It's way more than just background noise.
It's a crucial part of the storytelling, adding a depth you wouldn't get otherwise. It might even be part of why these films are so iconic.
That makes me wonder, why do directors keep coming back to classical music? What makes it so perfect for film?
Well, for one, it can convey such a vast range of emotions almost instantly. You hear those strings, that piano, and you immediately feel something.
Like it bypasses all the logic and goes straight to your heart. But why classical? Why not any other genre that can express emotion?
That's where the timeless aspect of classical music comes in. These pieces have resonated for centuries, That adds a certain gravity, connecting the film to universal human experiences.
So it's not just the emotions themselves, but the fact that these are feelings people have felt forever.
Right. And then there's this cultural familiarity. Even if you don't know the names, you've probably heard those iconic melodies somewhere.
Like Beethoven's For Elise or Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. I feel like everyone recognizes those.
Exactly. That familiarity creates an instant connection, even if it's subconscious. But beyond that, directors love it because it adds narrative depth.
Narrative depth, what do you mean by that?
Well, they can use specific pieces to foreshadow events, reflect a character's inner turmoil, or create symbolic layers.
So the music isn't just setting the mood, it's actually contributing to the story itself.
It's like a hidden language woven into the film, guiding the audience's understanding in really subtle ways.
That's so cool. And it's not just a technique from the golden age of Hollywood, right? Modern filmmakers are still doing it.
Absolutely. This tradition is alive and well, evolving and inspiring filmmakers today just as much as it did decades ago.
Like in The Pianist, for example. Chopin's music takes on this whole new meaning in the context of World War II.
Exactly. The film uses his work, known for its romantic and expressive qualities, as a symbol of resilience and hope in the face of just unimaginable horror.
It's like the music itself becomes a testament to the strength of the human spirit.
And then you have Black Swan, where Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake is basically woven into the entire film.
Oh yeah, that one really messes with your head, blurring the lines between what's real and what's performance. And the music plays a huge part in that.
Right. The director uses Tchaikovsky to ramp up the psychological tension, and it's incredibly effective. It's a great example of how a classic piece can be reimagined for a modern story.
Even in less obvious cases, it's there. Like in Shutter Island, they use composers like Mahler and Cage to create this constant feeling of unease.
It goes to show you how powerful music can be, even in a thriller. It's not just what you see, it's what you feel.
So classical music is doing a lot more than we might initially realize. But it's not just about the aesthetics, right? There's a psychological aspect to this.
You got it. There's a whole field of study dedicated to how music affects our brains, and it's fascinating stuff.
Okay, so what's actually happening in our heads when we hear those dramatic violins or those piano chords?
Well, instrumental music, especially classical, seems to bypass our logical minds and go straight for the emotions.
So we're not stuck trying to decode lyrics or figure out what it all means.
Nope. Our brains can focus on the pure sound, the melody, the harmony, the rhythm. It's a deeper, more emotional experience.
So that's why it's so good at setting the mood or enhancing a scene. It's shaping our emotions without us even knowing.
You got it. And that's just the beginning. There's a lot more to explore when it comes to the psychological impact of music and film, but I guess that's a conversation for part 2.
Okay, sounds good. Make sure you join us next time as we dive deeper into this rabbit hole. We'll be exploring the psychology of music and film even more. All right, so last time, we were starting to unpack how classical music can actually mess with you psychologically when you're watching a movie.
It's crazy, right? These pieces, some of them hundreds of years old, can still have such a strong impact on us today.
You mentioned how instrumental music, especially classical, can skip over our logical thinking and go straight for the feels. Can you break that down a bit more?
Yeah, sure. Think of it this way. When you hear a song with lyrics, your brain has to process the words, figure out what they mean, and then connect that to the music. It's a whole thing. But with instrumental music, especially classical, your brain can just focus on the pure sound.
So it's less about deciphering the message and more about feeling the impact.
Yeah, exactly. We're not trying to figure out lyrics. You're just experiencing the flow of the music, how it rises and falls. It's a much deeper, more emotional connection.
I get that.
Yeah.
But I mean, doesn't all music have that power to some degree? What makes classical so special in this context?
Well, classical music often has this huge dynamic range. You'll have these quiet moments that build up to these massive crescendos, and that ebb and flow can actually mirror the emotional arcs of a story.
So it's like the music is leading us through the story emotionally, even if we don't realize it.
Exactly. And remember we were talking about how classical music is timeless. That plays a part here, too. When you hear something that's been around for centuries, it adds this weight, this gravitas that connects it to something bigger than just us.
It's like tapping into a collective emotional memory, something we all share.
That's a great way to put it. And don't forget about the cultural familiarity thing. Even if we don't know the name of a piece, we've probably heard it somewhere. In a commercial, a cartoon, another film.
It's like those melodies are just ingrained in our lives.
Right. And that instant familiarity creates an emotional connection, even if it's subconscious. But classical music can also be used for more complex things, like creating contrast or irony.
Like that helicopter scene in Apocalypse Now, with Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, right? Using classical music to make us think more critically about what we're seeing.
Absolutely. And remember, classical doesn't just mean Beethoven or Mozart. It's a huge tradition, centuries of development, and it still inspires composers today.
Like those guys we talked about, John Williams and Howard Shore. They're creating these epic, timeless-sounding scores, but they're drawing inspiration from those classical giants.
Exactly. Think about those musical themes in Lord of the Rings, those leitmotifs. Shore uses them to represent different characters and places, just like Wagner did in his operas. It guides the viewer through the whole story.
It's like a secret layer of storytelling happening through the music. So cool.
Totally. And it's not just about the big, epic stuff either. Composers like Alexandre Desplat have shown us that classical sounds can work just as well in smaller, more character-driven films, like his score for The Shape of Water. It's delicate and nuanced and captures the emotions of the film perfectly.
It's like the music becomes a character in itself, right? Conveying things that words can't.
Exactly. It's a testament to how powerful and versatile classical music can be. It can be adapted and reinterpreted to fit any story, any mood. But I think it's also important to remember that not everyone loves the way classical music is used in film. Some people think it can be overused. Like it becomes a cliche or an easy way for filmmakers to get a specific emotion out of the audience.
That's a good point. It's like anything else. If it's not done well, it loses its power. But when it's done right, it's magic.
For sure. And that's why it's important to be aware of how it's being used, to really listen and appreciate the artistry behind it.
So how do we become more aware listeners? What should we be paying attention to?
Next time you watch a movie, try to really focus on the music. Don't just let it fade into the background. Think about how it makes you feel, how it connects to what's happening on screen. Does it add to the story or does it feel out of place?
Become a music detective.
Exactly. And if you hear something you really like, try to find out what it is. Look up the composer, the name of the piece, maybe even listen to other stuff by that composer.
It's like a whole new world of music waiting to be discovered. And that's what's so cool about this, right? It's not just about understanding classical music in film. It's about opening ourselves up to the power of music in general.
I like that. But hey, speaking of classical music, we've been talking about the old masters. What about modern composers who are like carrying the torch today?
Right. There's got to be a whole new generation of composers out there taking those classical traditions and doing something new and exciting with them.
You got it. And their contributions to film are just as important as those who came before them.
Okay, so let's dive into that world. Who are some of these modern composers who are pushing the boundaries of classical music in film?
Well, there's Rachel Portman, for starters. She actually made history back in 1996 by becoming the first woman to win an Oscar for Best Original Score. It was for her work on Emma.
Wow, I had no idea. What's her music like?
It's beautifully orchestrated, very lyrical and emotional. You can definitely hear the influence of Romantic-era classical music, but she brings her own unique voice to it.
It's so cool that even back then she was breaking barriers in a field that had been, like, totally dominated by men.
For sure. And then you've got Hans Zimmer, who's like a legend in the film scoring world. He's worked on huge movies like Inception and Interstellar.
Yeah, his music is so intense and epic. But it also has this, like, emotional depth to it that's hard to describe.
Right. And even though he uses a lot of electronic stuff and modern sounds, you can still hear those classical influences, the big melodies, the dramatic orchestral parts.
It's like he's not afraid to experiment and break the rules, but he still respects those classical traditions.
I think that's what makes his music so powerful. It's both familiar and surprising. And then there's Jóhann Jóhannsson, an Icelandic composer who wrote some truly beautiful music. Sadly, he's not with us anymore, but his work is still incredible.
I've heard some of his stuff in movies like Sicario and Arrival. It's super atmospheric and moving, but it's also really different from the, like, big orchestra scores we usually associate with classical music.
Yeah, his style was more minimalist, but he still used orchestral arrangements in a way that created this, like, really rich and textured sound. You really feel everything the characters are feeling.
It's amazing how these composers can take those classical foundations and build something new, but you can still tell it comes from that tradition.
It just shows how strong and adaptable classical music is. It's not just a bunch of rules, it's a framework for endless creativity.
So classical music isn't just about, like, dusty old sheet music and powdered wigs.
Definitely not. It's a living, breathing thing that's still evolving. And the coolest part is you don't need to be a music expert to appreciate it.
So for someone who wants to experience film music on a deeper level, what would you recommend?
Pay attention to the music. Don't just let it fade into the background. Ask yourself how it makes you feel, how it relates to the story. Is it helping to tell the story, or does it feel out of place?
Be that music detective.
Exactly. And if you hear something that grabs you, do some research. Find out who wrote it, what the name is, and maybe even listen to other music by that composer.
You might discover a whole world you never knew existed. And that's what makes this so cool. It's not just about classical music and film. It's about opening our ears and our minds to the power of music, period.
Well said. I think that's a great place to wrap up our exploration of this topic.
But before we go, I want to leave everyone with one last thought. We've talked about how classical music can make movies better, but it's important to remember that music can enrich our lives in so many ways.
Absolutely. Whether you're at a concert, listening to Spotify, or just humming a tune, music connects with us on a deep level.
So go out there, explore different genres, find new artists, and let the music move you.
And hey, maybe you'll even be inspired to make some music of your own.
The possibilities are endless. And with that, we've come to the end of our deep dive into the world of classical music and film. We hope you've enjoyed the ride.
Until next time, keep listening.
Okay, so we're back. And we're talking about the modern evolution of classical music and film. It's not just about those old school composers, right?
No, not at all. I mean, there are so many talented composers out there today taking those classical traditions and doing something totally new with them.
So who are some of these modern composers who are pushing the boundaries? Give me some names.
Well, let's start with Rachel Portman. She was actually the first woman to win an Oscar for Best Original Score. That was back in 1996 for the movie Emma.
Wow, I had no idea. What's her style like?
It's very beautiful, very lyrical, very emotional. You can hear the influence of, the Romantic era, but it's definitely her own unique voice.
That's so cool. Breaking barriers like that back in the 90s in a field that was pretty much all men.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you have someone like Hans Zimmer. I mean, he's like a legend in film scoring. He's done those huge blockbuster scores for Inception, Interstellar, all those.
His music is just so epic, right?
Yeah.
But there's also this emotional depth to it. I can never quite describe it.
Exactly. And, even though he uses a lot of electronic elements and modern sounds, you can still hear those classical influences, the big melodies, the orchestral stuff.
Right. It's like he's not afraid to experiment, but he still respects those traditions.
I think that's why it works so well. It's both familiar and new at the same time. And then there's Jóhann Jóhannsson. He was an Icelandic composer, and his music is just hauntingly beautiful.
Oh, yeah. I know his work from films like Sicario and Arrival. It's so atmospheric, really gets under your skin.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty different from the big bombastic orchestral stuff.
Yeah, his style was definitely more on the minimalist side, but he still used orchestral instruments in a way that created this really rich textured sound. You really get drawn into the emotions of it.
It's incredible how these composers can take those classical foundations and build something completely new. But you can still hear that connection to the tradition.
It's like proof that classical music isn't stuck in the past. It's got this versatility that lets it be reinterpreted and reimagined in endless ways.
So we're not talking about stuffy concert halls and powdered wigs, are we?
No way. It's a living, breathing art form that's still evolving. And you don't have to be a music scholar to enjoy it.
So what advice would you give to someone who wants to really experience film music on a deeper level?
I'd say just pay attention. Don't let the music just fade into the background. Think about how it makes you feel. Does it match what's happening on screen? Does it help tell the story?
Be that music detective.
Exactly. And if you hear something that really catches your ear, don't be afraid to look it up, find out what it is, who wrote it, maybe even check out some other music by that composer.
You never know what you might discover.
Exactly. And that's what's so great about all this. It's not just about understanding classical music and film. It's about opening yourself up to the power of music in general.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. We've covered so much ground today, from those silent film days all the way to modern composers who are pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey, and I hope our listeners have gained a new appreciation for the role music plays in their favorite films.
And who knows, maybe they'll even be inspired to seek out some new music, or even try their hand at creating their own.
That would be awesome. Music is for everyone, after all.
So true. Well, on that note, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of classical music and film. We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration of, well, who knows what. But it's going to be good.
Keep listening.